Howdy folks, welcome back to Bullets and Brass. Today we are looking at the main pieces of a rifle. Now I'm going to use this 308, this is a Savage Model 10, but for the most part these apply almost universally, and I will give a little breakdown when there's differences visually that are trickier, but for the most part we're just going to cover core pieces that you'll see referred to in instruction manuals, reviews, advertisements, anything like that. Now, if you are not brand new to firearms, this may be completely pointless. Go on, click off, and head off to some other video that's more exciting. This is for people who are really new to this and are just looking for some education. That's really, we're going to keep it super simple. So, rifle. This one in particular is a bolt action rifle. If they are smaller, a little lighter, more compact, they're often called carbines. There's no real set name in terms of that. The pronunciation kind of, wherever you are, that's what they're, what people use. You got to pick. Carbine is that version. Usually it refers to a shorter and lighter version of a full-size rifle. So we have a barrel. The end of the barrel is called the crown. Usually there's a particular cut to it. Each of those cuts has a different term. Now, the barrel itself has a taper and a weight. So different companies will call them different things. However, if you want to look it up, there are official tapers and weights defined by barrel manufacturers. This is a relatively medium to heavy barrel. It is a very slight taper. This is usually called a varmint taper, or sometimes tactical taper. The stock itself, the whole length is the stock. There are different kinds of stocks. This is a traditional mono stock. There are also multi-piece stocks where, for example, the piece up here is separate from back here. This is the forend, and it is where you would normally have your left hand, or if you're left-handed, your right hand, or where it would be resting on a sandbag, on a bipod, whatever support system you're using is in the forend. Usually in modern rifles, the forend is free-floated from the barrel, so they're not touching, but not always. The middle here, as far as I know, doesn't have a particular term of its own. Now, it is the receiver area because the receiver mounts into it. This is where any bolts are going to go to attach it. And if there's one critical area, this is it. Because this attachment to the metal of the rifle determines a lot about whether the stock is going to help or hurt accuracy. This assumes that what's happening up here is fine, but you can make or break right here. Now, this is the pistol grip, this area here. Sometimes they come down and they taper much more dramatically than this. This one is very vertical, which is commonly used for bipod shooting or for prone shooting. Anytime you're sitting behind the rifle or laying behind the rifle as opposed to standing, where your hand kind of forms more of an angle. Trigger guard right here, obviously the trigger. Right here is a magazine well. Now, some rifles have an internal magazine that doesn't come out. Some have a droppable bottom piece, but the magazine itself is internal and doesn't come out. Some are single shot and there's nothing here, it's fixed. My fingers come all the way up through. So single shots, there'll be just a plate inside, and this will be solid. In this case, we have a magazine, and the magazine goes up into, helps if you do it right, goes up into the rifle, seats into the magazine well, and can feed ammunition. Now, continuing on the magazine real quick, you have, I'm hoping this shows, you have feed lips that hold individual rounds as they come to the top and keep it positioned for the bolt to feed Then you have a follower, which is the part inside that's spring-loaded that pushes each round up. They also help position them so they can stagger if it's a staggered magazine. And then you have the main body of it and a magazine plate bottom. Bottom plate, pad, there's different names. They can be flush, like this one where they're flush to the rifle, or they can be designed to stick out a little bit to be easier to grab or to push on to make sure it's seated. The butt, there's a lot of names, but it has several pieces, and usually we refer to this as the butt of the rifle. There's actually a pad in this case, but you know, it's the whole area. The butt stock is the section of the stock. The cheek rest is this area here. Now I've got a pad on this to help lift it up a little bit, and this whole thing is a pouch that is attached to it. But that area is the cheek rest. That is where your cheek is sitting on the rifle. Butt stock, butt pad, there are spacers, and they will be used to adjust length of pull. Length of pull is the distance from here to here. So basically from the back to your trigger, that is your length of pull. Where else are we at here? Okay. Obviously the scope, these rings that are attaching it are scope rings that come down to a scope base down here that is attached to the rifle. There are different ways of doing that. Some rifles have a built-in base, some don't use a base at all, and the rings are actually screwed straight into the receiver. Now the receiver is the part that actually holds the bolt and usually whatever magazine system or ammunition feeding system there is. Very often it will be visually very different between different kinds of firearms, but that is pretty much how the government defines it and the industry defines it. So we have a bolt, it goes back and forth. This is the whole bolt. So I have locking lugs here at the top, and you're not gonna be able to see it, but there's a firing pin in the center, an ejector, and an extractor. The extractor is just like a little claw, and the ejector is a pin that's spring-loaded. The bolt handle is the part you actually hold. In this case, I'm not gonna get into the nitty-gritty in this. That's a more advanced topic. Oh, I don't think this is gonna be visible. So in this rifle, we have a tang safety, which is right here. You push it up or down this way to turn it on and off. You'll also see what's called a cross bolt safety, which is very often down here in front of the trigger or right behind it, where you push a little bar one way or the other, and that is a cross bolt safety. And it really, most of them are blocking the trigger. It depends on the design. Some will block the firing pin, some will block the sear, some will block the trigger itself. Now, that gets into internal mechanics, which get a little trickier, and I don't have a good visual for that, unfortunately. I'm gonna have to see what I can find, but we will get into that in a second. Let me put the bolt back. There we go. It's one of those times where you can pull the trigger pretty safely because the bolt isn't even in the rifle, or it was all the way back coming out of the rifle. But still, you make sure it's not loaded. Never know. So this is a bipod. This is a Harris bipod, very common. And unfortunately, I don't have a good way to show it, but it's mounted to a bipod stud, which are also sling studs. They are the same name for the same item, and we mount different things. So very often you'll see it's a little cap-like thing on the bottom of a stock. And they have a little hole through them, and they don't pivot usually. They're usually a fixed in place kind of thing. And you'll sometimes see two of them, one in front of the other. That's because you want to be able to put a bipod on and a sling. In this case, they were on a sliding rail on the bottom of this rifle, this stock, and I've only got the one. I took out the other one because I didn't need it. So that is all we've got for this video. I will get into the mechanics of a trigger, a sear, hammer, firing pins, and all that stuff in a future video. I need to figure out how to make it visible and clear for you guys. So take care, have fun, and stay safe, all.